The helicopter blades sliced through the night air, their rhythmic hum echoing across the dark countryside. From inside, William Hartley, one of America's youngest billionaires, stared blankly out the window. The city lights glittered below like a galaxy turned upside down, distant, cold, untouchable. He should have been in Tokyo tonight, signing one of the biggest merger deals of his career. But somewhere between the endless champagne meetings and the hollow applause of investors, something inside him cracked. He'd looked into his reflection on the hotel window that morning. The sharp suit, the perfect posture, the face that sold headlines, and felt nothing, no pride, no joy, just a bone-deep emptiness. So he did something he hadn't done in over 2 years. He came home. Home. The word didn't even feel right on his tongue anymore. The estate sat miles away from the noise of New York City, a sprawling mansion of white stone and manicured lawns. His late mother had loved it. His father still lived there, though lived might have been too generous a word. They hadn't spoken properly since William took over the company. His father, once a respected man in his own right, had grown bitter and reckless after his wife's death, gambling away savings, embarrassing the family, clinging to the name Hartley like a title he no longer deserved. And yet, despite everything, William still sent money every month. He told himself it was out of duty, but deep down it was guilt. The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. "We're approaching the Hartley estate, sir." William nodded. "Take us down." The helicopter landed softly near the garden. He stepped out, adjusting his navy coat against the cool wind. The mansion loomed before him, pale and magnificent under the moonlight. Its windows glowed faintly, but the rest of the house was dark. He dismissed his pilot and walked toward the side door. No one knew he was coming. He wanted it that way. He wanted to see things as they were. But as he entered through the side hallway, a sound stopped him. The sharp clang of a bucket, followed by a low voice muttering something under its breath. He frowned. It was nearly midnight. Who could possibly be awake? He followed the noise toward the servants' quarters. The corridor smelled faintly of cleaning detergent. He turned the corner and froze. There, kneeling on the floor beside the guest bathroom, was an elderly man, thin, gray-haired, trembling slightly as he scrubbed the toilet. Beside him stood a tall black woman in a faded uniform, arms crossed, expression stern but calm. William's breath caught. The man on the floor was his father. For a moment, he thought he was imagining it. The once proud Charles Hartley, who'd lectured him about dignity and discipline his entire childhood, was on his knees, scrubbing porcelain like a servant. "What the hell?" William started, his voice echoing down the hall. The woman turned startled. Her eyes widened slightly when she recognized him. "Mr. Hartley?" William's tone was sharp. "What is going on here?" The maid straightened her back, wiping her hands on a rag. "I didn't expect you tonight, sir." "That's obvious," he said coldly. "Now explain why my father is cleaning a toilet in his own house." She met his gaze steadily, calm, firm, unflinching. "Because he made a mess of it." His eyes narrowed. "You're joking." She didn't blink. "I'm not." William looked back at his father. "Dad, get up." Charles didn't move. He avoided his son's eyes, muttering something under his breath. His hands shook around the scrub brush. William stepped forward, his voice rising. "I said get up." The maid stepped between them, not rudely but protectively. "No, sir." Let him finish. William's jaw tightened. "Who do you think you are?" "My name's Angela Brooks," she said evenly. "I'm the head maid. Your father knows me well." "Apparently," William muttered, glancing at her uniform. "And you think you have the right to teach him a little humility?" She interrupted softly. "No, sir. I'm just helping him remember it." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was thick, electric. William's pulse hammered in his ears. He couldn't decide whether to fire her on the spot or demand answers. Angela's voice broke the silence again, calm and steady. "Your father's been difficult lately. Refuses to let anyone clean after him. Insists he can do things himself. But when he makes a mess, he leaves it for others to fix. Tonight, I told him no more." William's tone hardened. "So you made him scrub floors like a janitor?" "I didn't make him," she said. "I gave him a choice." He let out a short, bitter laugh. "A choice?" "He's 70 years old." Angela didn't waver. Age doesn't excuse pride. That struck him harder than he expected. He turned toward his father again. Dad, why didn't you just ask someone else to clean it? Charles finally looked up and his face red, his eyes watery. Because I didn't want to be a burden, and because I made the mess. William stared at him, words caught in his throat. Angela's gaze softened. He's not being punished, Mr. Hartley. He's being treated like a man capable of doing something right again. William ran a hand through his hair, completely thrown. This is insane. I come home expecting to find my father resting, and instead I find this. Angela tilted her head slightly. Resting doesn't always mean healing, sir. Her tone wasn't disrespectful, it was honest. And for some reason, that honesty disarmed him more than anger ever could. He sighed, turning away. Fine, enough, Dad, go to bed. I'll handle this in the morning. Charles hesitated, then slowly rose to his feet. She's right, Will, he said quietly. I've been useless long enough. William blinked, not sure he'd heard correctly. His father's voice carried no bitterness and only weariness. Angela handed him a towel. Wash your hands, Mr. Hartley, the water's warm. The old man took it with shaky hands, muttering a soft thank you. When he left, William and Angela were alone in the hall. He turned to her, exhaling slowly. You've got nerve, I'll give you that. She gave a small smile. Nerve's what keeps the world spinning, sir. He stared at her, this tall, dark-skinned woman with steady eyes and a calm that unnerved him. Something about her presence filled the house in a way money never could. How long have you worked here? He asked. Almost 3 years, he frowned. Since after my mother's death? She nodded. Your father hired me. He said he needed someone who wasn't afraid to tell him the truth. William scoffed. And you've been doing that ever since? When he listens, yes, she said softly. He studied her for a long moment. You realize most employers would have fired you for what I saw tonight? I know, she replied, meeting his gaze without fear. But then again, most employers wouldn't have left their fathers alone long enough to forget what dignity means. The words hit him square in the chest. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came. She took a step back. Good night, Mr. Hartley, and with that, she turned and walked down the corridor, her footsteps echoing softly until they disappeared into the dark. Later that night, William stood in the guest bathroom, staring at the bucket and brush still resting by the wall. The faint scent of detergent hung in the air. He knelt down slowly, tracing a finger along the rim of the porcelain, spotless, gleaming. It wasn't about the toilet. It wasn't even about humiliation, it was about truth. And for the first time in a long time, William Hartley, billionaire empire builder, son, realized how much of his own life had been built on forgetting the very thing Angela had reminded his father of that night. Dignity isn't in what you own, but in how you live. He exhaled and stood, looking at his reflection in the mirror. The man staring back at him suddenly felt smaller and somehow more human. Sunlight crept slowly across the white stone walls of the Hartley estate, spilling through tall windows and painting thin bars of gold across the marble floors. The house was quiet, too quiet for a place that had once hosted laughter, parties, and music. William Hartley hadn't slept. He'd spent the night pacing his old bedroom, haunted by the image of his father kneeling on the floor and the calm defiance in Angela Brooks's eyes. The whole thing replayed again and again. The brush, the bucket, her voice saying, "Age doesn't excuse pride." By dawn, he'd decided he needed answers. He found her in the kitchen just after 7. The smell of coffee and freshly baked bread filled the room. She stood by the counter, tying her apron, humming a gospel tune under her breath. She didn't look surprised to see him, only calm, like she'd been expecting him. "Good morning, Mr. Hartley," she said, turning toward him. He folded his arms. "We need to talk." Angela nodded toward the small breakfast table. "Then sit. I just brewed coffee." He hesitated but sat down anyway. She poured him a cup and placed it in front of him before taking the seat opposite. "Did my father sleep?" he asked. "He did," she said. "Better than he has in weeks." "That's hard to believe considering what I saw last night." Her expression didn't change. "Sometimes honesty helps people sleep," he frowned. "Honesty? You call making an old man scrub floors honesty?" "I call it responsibility," she replied gently. "Something he's been running from." He leaned forward. "You don't get to decide that." "And you do?" she asked quietly. "When was the last time you decided anything about this family?" The words hit him like a slap. He opened his mouth to fire back but stopped. She wasn't angry, just matter of fact, her tone firm but compassionate. Look, she continued, I know it shocked you, but your father's been carrying guilt since your mother passed. He blames himself for everything, her death, the gambling, the drinking. He won't talk about it, so it eats him alive. Yesterday, he yelled at the staff for hours after spilling something. I told him to clean it. When he did, something changed in him. For the first time, he looked at me and said, I can fix at least one thing. William stared at her, words stuck in his throat. He took a sip of coffee instead, letting the silence stretch. Finally, he said, You speak to him like you've known him for years. In some ways, I have, she said softly. People show you who they are when they're broken. I've seen a lot of broken men. Because you've worked for a lot of them? Because I've raised one, she said. He looked up sharply. You have a son? Had, she corrected quietly. He died in a construction accident 5 years ago. He was 22. Hard-headed, proud. Just like your father, just like you. William's voice dropped. I'm sorry, she gave a small nod. Thank you. After that, I promised myself I'd never stand by and watch another man drown in pride. It kills slower than any disease. He rubbed a hand over his face. So you took it on yourself to fix mine? She smiled sadly. Not to fix him, Mr. Hartley. To remind him he's still worth fixing. Something inside him shifted. He had spent years burying guilt under money, and here was this woman, someone the world barely noticed, speaking truths that reached straight through his armor. He cleared his throat. You talk about him like he's family. In this house, she said, we're all someone's family. That's what your mother believed. His head jerked up. You knew my mother? Angela hesitated. Not personally, but I used to clean the Hartley Hospital wing in the city years ago. She volunteered there every Thursday. Never wore jewelry, never raised her voice. She said once, kindness is the only inheritance that matters. Angela smiled faintly. Your father told me that story when he hired me. William leaned back, remembering his mother's voice. It had been so long since anyone had spoken her name in that kitchen. He looked around. The same blue tiles, the same oak cabinets. The light felt softer now, almost forgiving. After a moment, he said quietly, You said he blames himself for her death. Why? Angela folded her hands. Because he was driving. The air left William's lungs. That's not true. He told you she had a heart attack, didn't he? He nodded slowly. She did, Angela said. But it happened while he was arguing with her behind the wheel. He looked away for a second, lost control. He's carried that second every day since. William's chest tightened. He remembered the night of the crash, the phone call, the hospital corridor, his father's face blank with shock. But his father had never said a word beyond, it was quick. Now it all made sense. The silence, the self-destruction, the way he refused help. He swallowed hard. Why didn't he tell me? Because he thought you'd hate him, Angela said. And because every time he looked at you, he saw her eyes. He lowered his gaze to the cup in his hands. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The ticking of the clock filled the room, slow and steady like the heartbeat of the house itself. Finally, he said quietly, Thank you. For telling me? Angela shook her head. Don't thank me. Go tell him you forgive him. Later that morning, William found his father in the garden. The old man sat on a wooden bench under the maple tree, dressed neatly, staring at nothing. The air smelled of cut grass and rain. Morning, William said, walking up. Charles looked up, squinting in the sunlight. You're still here? Thought you'd run back to your towers by now. Not today. They sat in silence for a while. Birds chirped somewhere in the distance. Finally, William said, Why didn't you tell me the truth about Mom? His father froze. His jaw tightened. Angela talks too much. She talks because you don't, William said softly. Charles exhaled shakily. I couldn't bear it, Will, you were so young. I wanted you to remember her smiling, not screaming. You think I don't remember enough pain on my own? The old man's voice cracked. I killed her, son. Not on purpose, but I did. And I didn't deserve to raise you after that. William turned to face him. Then why didn't you let me in? We could have grieved together instead of alone. His father's eyes filled. Because you remind me of her. Every look, every word. I thought pushing you away would hurt less. It didn't, William said quietly. They sat there for a long time. Two men who had spent years avoiding each other, finally running out of places to hide. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything they'd never said. When Charles finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "She used to say you'd build something great one day." She was right. William smiled sadly. "I built everything but a home." Charles reached for his son's hand, his own trembling. "Maybe it's time you start." For the first time in years, William let him. Their hands, one strong once, one still steady, clasped together. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it softened its edges. From the kitchen window, Angela watched them. She smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. Then she turned back to her work, humming that same gospel tune under her breath. Later, when William returned inside, he found her dusting the bookshelves in the hall. "Angela," he said. "You were right," she raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "About pride. It ruins people." She gave a small shrug. "So does guilt," he nodded. "You've done more for this family than anyone else since my mother died." "I just did my job." He shook his head. "No, you did more than that. You cared." For a moment she looked at him, emotion flickering in her dark eyes. "Sometimes that's all a house needs to start breathing again." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe I owe you a raise." She laughed quietly. "Money's not what fixes people, Mr. Hartley." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "No, but maybe people can fix people." They stood there for a long moment, sunlight streaming between them, the distance that once filled the house beginning to fade. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the Hartley mansion no longer felt cold. Charles dozed by the fireplace. Angela read quietly in the corner, and William sat at the piano his mother once played, pressing a single key at a time until the melody found him again. For the first time in years, the sound didn't echo. It belonged. Morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows, filling the Hartley mansion with a quiet glow. The air felt lighter, as if the house itself had exhaled. For the first time in years, William Hartley woke to something he hadn't felt since childhood: peace. He went downstairs expecting silence, but soft laughter reached him from the kitchen. Angela Brooks stood by the counter, teaching his father how to knead dough. The old man's hands, once used only to sign documents, pressed clumsily into the flour. A white cloud dusted his shirt, and he was laughing, actually laughing. William stopped in the doorway, stunned. Angela glanced up. "Morning, Mr. Hartley. You're just in time to see your father learning patience." Charles grinned. "She says I knead too hard." "You're trying to fight the dough," Angela teased. "Let it work with you." William couldn't help smiling. "I don't believe this. You two look like a cooking show gone wrong." "Then sit," Angela said. "Breakfast will be right." He joined them, watching the quiet ease between his father and the woman who had somehow managed to make this house breathe again. After breakfast, William found his father in the garden trimming rose bushes. "Since when do you garden?" William asked. "Since she made me," Charles said with a smirk. "Says I need to do something that grows instead of something that breaks." William chuckled. "She's right." Charles's smile faded slightly. "You know, Will, I don't remember the last time we spoke like this without shouting." "Neither do I," William said softly. "Guess it took a stranger to remind us we're still family." Charles looked toward the house where Angela was hanging laundry in the sun. "Not a stranger anymore." William nodded. "No, not anymore." Over the next weeks, change rippled quietly through the mansion. The staff began to talk again, laughter replacing whispers. William turned one of the unused rooms into a library his mother had always wanted. Charles began painting, with shaky, uneven strokes at first, but full of life. And Angela, she became the quiet center of it all. She ran the household with firm kindness, never letting comfort slip into arrogance. Everyone, from the cook to the gardener, respected her. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her steadiness was enough. One evening, William found her in the library dusting shelves. "You're rebuilding this place," he said. "I'm just keeping it honest," she replied. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," she said, smiling. "But people don't change because someone orders them to. They change when someone believes they can." He studied her for a long moment. "You believe in my father?" "I do. And in me?" She met his eyes. "I wouldn't still be here if I didn't." The words lingered in the air. Something unspoken passed between them. Not romance, but recognition. Two people from different worlds who had finally learned to see each other clearly. A month later, William invited the local staff and their families for a small garden dinner. The Hartley estate had never opened its gates to anyone outside the upper class. But that evening children ran across the grass, lanterns flickered in the trees, and music played from an old speaker. Angela coordinated everything, quietly, efficiently, like she had been hosting gatherings all her life. When the food was served, William stood to speak. "Some of you have worked here longer than I've been alive," he began. "This house has seen good years and bad ones. Lately it forgot what made it special. The people inside it. Tonight I want to thank the person who reminded me of that." He turned toward Angela. "She came here to work," he said, "but she taught us what work really means: honesty, humility, and heart. This house stands because of her." The guests clapped. Charles raised his glass. Angela, embarrassed, tried to wave it off. "I just did my duty," she said quietly. William smiled. "Then may we all learn to do ours the way you do." For the first time, she looked proud, not for recognition, but because the message had landed where it needed to. Later that night, after everyone had gone, the three of them, William, Charles, and Angela, sat on the porch watching the lanterns sway in the warm breeze. Charles leaned back in his chair, content. "You know," he said, "your mother would have loved this. She always wanted laughter back in these walls." William nodded. "Feels like she's here." Angela looked up at the stars. Maybe she never left. They sat in comfortable silence. The world outside the gates went on with its noise and headlines, but inside, the Hartley mansion was simply a home again. As summer turned to fall, William made another decision. He announced that he was stepping down from day-to-day management of Hartley Holdings to focus on philanthropy. Reporters called it reckless. Shareholders panicked, but for the first time he didn't care. He used part of his fortune to open the Hartley Foundation for Dignity and Work, a program providing employment and education for people rebuilding their lives. And he named Angela Brooks as its co-director. When he told her, she was stunned. "Me? I don't have a college degree, Mr. Hartley." "You have more than that," he said. "You have purpose." She hesitated. "Running something that big. That's your world, not mine." "Then let's make it ours," he said. "Together." For a moment she searched his face, looking for any trace of pity. She found none. Only sincerity. Finally she nodded. "All right. But we do it my way. Respect first, titles later." He grinned. "Deal." 6 months later, the foundation's first center opened in the city. Angela walked through its glass doors wearing a simple navy dress, the same calm dignity she'd always carried. On the wall behind her, a plaque read, "Dignity is the wealth that never runs out." Eleanor Hartley Williams' mother's words. The opening ceremony was modest. Local workers, single parents, and community leaders filled the room. Angela spoke briefly, her voice steady. "This place isn't about charity," she said. "It's about opportunity. It's about remembering that everyone, no matter where they come from, deserves to stand tall." William watched her from the side, proud. His father, sitting in the front row, wiped at his eyes. When she finished, applause filled the hall, and for a brief, shining moment, everything felt exactly as it should. That night, back at the mansion, William found Angela in the garden. The air smelled of rain and earth. She stood by the fountain, looking at the reflection of the house lights on the water. He walked up beside her. "You did well today," she smiled. "So did you." He looked toward the house. "I used to think success was what you could build with your hands. Now I think it's what you can build in someone else's heart." Angela nodded. "That's the kind that lasts." He turned to her. "Thank you, Angela, for reminding me." She looked at him, eyes warm. "You reminded yourself." "I just held up the mirror." They shared a quiet laugh. The breeze moved through the garden, carrying with it the faint scent of roses, the same ones Charles tended every morning. For once, William didn't think about meetings or headlines or legacies. He thought about the people who had saved him, the father who finally found forgiveness, and the woman who taught him how. The Hartley estate never returned to the cold grandeur it once had. It became something better, open, alive, full of voices and stories. Children from the foundation visited on weekends. Laughter replaced silence, and every Sunday morning Angela, William, and Charles sat together for breakfast in a Billionaire, a maid and a man learning to live again, different worlds, same table. When visitors asked William how his life had changed so completely, he always said the same thing. A woman taught my father how to stand and taught me how to see.